What's up, everyone, and welcome to Method in the Madness. This is the podcast that not only delves deep into design and creativity, but also leadership, productivity, and personal development. So, just to kind of give a quick update before I jump into the intro for episode 4, this is the kind of first episode that I've recorded since I launched the podcast, and has been the first opportunity I've really had to kind of comment about that. And the response from everyone has just been pretty overwhelming, if I'm honest, in a really positive way, though. I didn't really know what to expect, but I can tell you it certainly wasn't this, that's for sure. I mean, what day is it now? It's been just over a week, and when I see the amount of people that have listened to the show and also where they've listened from, it's just crazy. I think it's reached 18 countries, for example, and today I broke the barrier of 1,000 downloads for the first time, obviously, and I know it's probably due to a lot of traffic in a condensed amount of time, but regardless, I mean, that's mental. I can't believe that in such an awesome way. And the words of encouragement that people have sent through, and the willingness, of my kind of network to kind of help me promote the show as well, has just been incredible. So, and I thank you all. I couldn't have asked for a better network of kind of people to be helping me, if I'm honest. It's also, it's pretty scary to put yourself out there on a global platform like this, and to see the positive response from people. There's obviously friends and family, but there's complete strangers getting in touch, just saying how much they've enjoyed the show too. So, if you are listening right now, or you've listened previously to the show, subscribed, reviewed, shared an image, or supported the show in any way imaginable, I'm forever grateful, and thank you very much for your support. I'll keep going, don't worry. Moving on to episode 4, though. Today I sit down with Luke and Hazel Robertson, who are explorers in residence at the Royal Scottish Geographical Society. They're also guides for the Polar Academy, they're endurance athletes, and also ambassadors for Marie Curie, that amazing cause, obviously. So, talk about power couples. These guys are awesome. While they are an incredible duo, obviously, they both have super interesting kind of personal journeys, which I was excited to kind of jump into and kind of unpick on the show. And obviously, due to the nature of being explorers, I was wanting this episode just to be a tad little bit longer, but I just had so many questions to ask them. But we mainly cover how Luke and Hazel have both fallen in love with exploring an expedition and what kind of lured them towards it. Luke tells us about his personal journey and how overcoming some serious health issues that he's experienced has helped him actually realize his passion. And Hazel and Luke both discuss Luke's expedition to the South Pole, where he became the first Scot, youngest Brit, and first person in history with a pacemaker to reach the South Pole unassisted, which is just an insane feat to hear about. We talk about the struggles both mentally and physically. Hazel tells us about her personal journey as well, from being a no-show at a half marathon to taking on ultramarathons such as the 140-mile Arctic Ice Ultra in Sweden, which is crazy. And she's also got an ultramarathon coming up in Chamonix as well, which is cool. And we obviously cover a whole bunch of other stuff, like the importance of working together as a team when the going gets tough, the power of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, and the benefit that can have in your life. There's so much we could have chatted about, to be honest, but it was great for them to kind of come in and be so open and give me an insight into their world. It was absolutely awesome to have them on the show. So without much further ado, please welcome Luke and Hazel Robertson to Method in the Madness. So Luke and Hazel, thank you very much for both coming on the show. It's great to have you on the podcast. For those of you who don't know, Luke and Hazel are both endurance athletes, explorers in residence at the Royal Scottish Geographical Society, and I also saw that you're now guides for the Polar Academy too, which is some CV to have for sure. I'm apologize in advance because I've got tons of questions to ask you that I'm going to berate you about because I'm kind of interested in the subject. But to kick off, I suppose, what has made you both so interested in exploring an expedition?
was like looking at who's going to go first.
Like, you, me.
So I guess looking back, I've been really lucky to have amazing parents that really, have kind of got an interest in the outdoors, and also to have moved around quite a lot as a kid. So I was lucky enough to spend 4 formative years from 9 to 13 living in Alaska and Canada.
Oh,
So,
cool.
I was out building forts and fishing, and we had moose like coming through our back garden, and porcupines, and learning to snowboard, all this like just amazing things at that age. And I guess that kind of instilled this like love of the outdoors and of nature, and just being outdoors, I felt kind of calm and excited, and just this whole amazing thing that the kind of the outdoors does.
What was Alaska like?
Pretty amazing. It's cold in the winter, and it's actually on a similar latitude to the north of Scotland. So you think of it as being really, really northern, but actually it's similar latitude. So similar hours of daylight, but lots of snow in winter. But summers are glorious and warm, but with a lot of mosquitoes. So that's not as much fun.
Oh, wow.
But so I guess from then it kind of evolved. And then after school, me and a friend decided we were going to walk the West Highland Way, and borrowed a tent from my brother who was in Scouts. We're woefully unprepared. I think we had tins of food and stuff like that. It was just ridiculous, heavy backpacks. And the first night we got into Mulgai, where we set off from, it was absolutely chucking it down with rain. So we went to go put up our tents. It was kind of getting dark. And we hadn't had packed any tent pegs. I hadn't even checked the tent to do all that. So we managed to scrape them off some other people that were camping as well. And another time we ran out of food. So we just made all these complete mistakes and totally messed it up. But we got to Fort William and we did the West Highland Way, and it was just this, this just amazing sense of achievement, and that whole thing where you kind of go through a really tough time and you're not sure you're going to do it at one point, and then you do, and it's just this kind of sense of achievement. So I guess those things kind of spurred me on to then think about, okay, well, other expeditions and other things that I could do. So it's been a bit of a gradual process like that. But I think that kind of outdoor bit and having that exposure to testing yourself in an outdoor environment as a kid is really what's instilled all this. And, that's part of the reason that we're delighted to be guides for the Polar Academy, which is this amazing charity who, so it's founded by Craig Matheson, and it essentially,
fellow Matheson.
I think it's maybe got an eye in it, but
oh, well, close.
Close enough. And it essentially develops and creates the next generation of leaders. So
cool.
it targets kids that maybe have low self-confidence, so not the kind of overachievers at school or the underachievers, but this kind of middle group that are termed invisible children. So 14 to 17-year-old, they've maybe been bullied, they've maybe had really hard times at home, and things that their confidence is completely shattered. But what they do have is this amazing resilience, and this, they've had to just get up and get on with things every day.
Yeah.
And it's actually helping them realize their potential and helping them unlock that. So it's this year-long training program that they go through, physical, mental, learning, camping, winter camping skills. And then eventually they build up to leading a 2-week expedition in some of the harshest conditions in the planet in eastern Greenland. So a ski expedition.
Wow.
Just completely transformative. So I think getting in at a young age and actually being able to, that's kind of changed me for sure. So it's amazing to be able to help others do the same.
That's cool. What about yourself, Luke?
Well, I definitely had a similar sort of formative West Highland Way trip at the start of university, but that's another story. Looking back, so I'm from a farming background. So my dad's a farmer in the northeast of Scotland. So I was always out and about on the farm, exploring the land around, making dens, kind of that side of things. So I was always outdoors. I loved history. So I ended up studying history at uni, actually, and got really into polar history. And so looked back at the polar explorers of the early 20th century and really got into that. And then, although, a farming family from the northeast of Scotland doesn't sound like the most adventurous family in the world, my mum and dad actually picked up sticks and moved to France when I was 8 years old, without, before the days of the internet or guidebooks or stuff like that. We literally just packed up the car with the dog and drove off to France to find somewhere to live for however long we wanted to. And I went to a French-speaking school, so I, couldn't speak a word of French really. and going to this new place, meeting new people. It was a real adventure as an 8-year-old.
Wow.
So that definitely, again, instilled that sense of wonder and just get out and do things. And again, to echo Hazel, my parents were always encouraging me to explore, ask questions, be interested in the world, big ideas, and think that nothing is impossible. And so though they worry a lot now, it is probably their fault looking back. And then I've always been just really sort of curious about the world in general. I think humans by nature want to find out about each other. That's why we are social creatures. Yeah. And I had a huge imagination for these places that I would read in books when I was younger. And it got to the stage, I guess, where imagining them wasn't enough, and I wanted to see if the reality lived up to my imagination, my expectations. So lots of different factors kind of come together to be interested in the outdoors.
Pretty unique set of experiences, though. And both in Scotland.
Yeah.
I obviously first met you guys when, Luke, you were preparing for your due south expedition, which was to the South Pole of all places. Not a small expedition by any kind of stretch of the imagination, but you are the, I believe, first Scot, youngest Brit, and as well as that, you also were the first person with an artificial pacemaker, just to kind of add another level of a complexity to that. Could you tell us a bit more about due south?
Yes, absolutely. So I'll provide a bit of context. It's probably quite helpful. So going back to that first question about how I became interested in the outdoors, when I was reading about history and the history of explorers, Antarctica was always the main one that would always come up as the toughest, and you would see pictures of people dragging sledges for long distances, and those kind of pictures and imagination stick with you quite a lot. And so this was always in the back of my mind. And then university happens, you're struggling to get by as it is, and struggling through university. But then it got to the end, or towards the end, and I decided I wanted to try something a bit bigger, and I didn't know what it was, but in my mind I still had this sort of draw of Antarctica from those pictures. And then something, a bit of a surprise happened. So I was studying for my final exams and started getting some heart palpitations. And ignored...
Not uncommon when you're studying for exams.
Exactly, yeah. I put it down to caffeine and just everything else I could think of, other than the fact that something might be wrong with me. I was a 22-year-old boy. I was pretty invincible, to a certain extent. And eventually was put on a 1-day ECG to monitor my heart, a 5-day ECG, and told that I needed an artificial pacemaker. And I didn't know what a pacemaker was. Yeah. And it was past 5 p.m. on a Friday. I had a voicemail from my GP telling me I needed one. And my
cracked it to you over the phone?
Yeah.
Well, on a voicemail, nonetheless.
And I was trying to give blood. And so I got out of trying to give blood, got outside at 5:05 and had the voicemail and couldn't do anything about it.
What a way to break the news.
Yeah. So,
jeez,
and the only person I could think of, there were 2 people who had a pacemaker. One was my granddad, who was 90, who just had one fitted. And the other was Alex Ferguson, the Manchester United manager, who...
I didn't know he had a pacemaker.
Yeah, he does. And, you see him on the sidelines and you think, he's pretty stressed out. You can see why he's got a bit of a dodgy ticker. So, it was all a bit worrying. And then it happened. So the day after my final exam, I got the operation. It was fitted. So not much of an exam celebration afterwards. But,
no, I can imagine.
But what it did do is it made me realize that your plans in life don't always go to plan. And this idea of doing some big expedition when I was 40, 50, however old, when I'd saved up all the money and it was all very planned out, might never happen. So I started putting plans into place to try and get there as quickly as I could. I even worked in finance for 5 years to try and fund it. That's how much I wanted it. And things were going okay. It took many years of Googling, of trying to make contacts and things. And then we will get onto the expedition, I promise.
Yeah. No, you're good.
And then I was about to go to Greenland on a training trip and started getting headaches. And again, despite the pacemaker stuff, put it down to anything but something might be wrong with me. And long story short, I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. So it took half an hour off work to go and get a CT scan, didn't go back to work for 4 months. It was diagnosed as a meningioma, which is it was a large brain tumor. And doctors could only give me a CT scan, not an MRI scan, because of my pacemaker. So they were 99.9% sure it was a tumor. And then I woke up 2 weeks later after the op, and it was actually a large cyst, an enterogenous cyst that is impossible to diagnose without an MRI, which lets you see what it's made of. So yeah, I got lucky with that one as well. I'll maybe touch on that a bit later.
To a certain extent. So I had to go through the trauma of having brain surgery. But.
Yeah, but again, afterwards you have this kind of this survivor syndrome of thinking how lucky you are to be there and all those kind of things, and we'll maybe touch on it a bit later. So the plans were back on track to get to Antarctica. And then 18 months later, after brain surgery, found myself on the edge of the continent of Antarctica, about to try and ski 730 miles in 45 days, all by myself. Nothing but snow and ice, some wind and a blue sky ahead of me. Oh. And I mean, of course, that's not to say that a lot of other people didn't help me to get to that starting point. No, I wouldn't have been able to get there without Hazel, for example, or my parents or her parents and loads of others. But yeah, that was the starting point of the whole expedition, how I got there. So.
What was going through your mind when you were taking like step one?
Lots of different things. Step one was very daunting, to be honest. It was a case of, have I even packed the right things? Like, did I pack things like tent pegs? I was like, I'm so sure. I triple checked, but you're like, maybe I didn't. What happens? And can you imagine the embarrassment of getting picked up after day 2 of
10
trip?
miles?
Yeah,
great.
I forgot some tent pegs. So there was definitely that, and that was at the very start, it was just like deep breath, daunting, and then go, basically.
Wow.
Lots of other emotions throughout, but yes, step one was
I can imagine.
Fear.
I've watched your TEDx talk tons of times, and you kind of tell this amazing hilarious story about a single jelly bean. Could you tell us a bit about that for people who haven't? Go and watch the TED talk, by the way. If you YouTube it, it'll come up. But
talking of fear, TEDx talks is one of the most scary things you can do, but also the most enjoyable. But anyway,
that's what Dawn was saying as well. Like on episode 1, he was just like, you rehearse, and then you kind of have that moment when you go out there and there's this auditorium just staring at you, silence.
With a countdown clock as well, telling you you've got to stop, in 8 minutes or 10 minutes. The jelly bean story. So it kind of revolves around the fact that when I was skiing to the South Pole, I had jelly beans, and they were part of my nutritious diet every day. They were probably about the most nutritious thing I ate. And I had these big mitts on because it was so cold. And it meant that when I was trying to eat my food, I couldn't just take my hands out of the mitts because they would get frostbitten very quickly. So I had to try
that quick?
Yeah. When you're switching between your big mitts to your more dexterous gloves to put up your tent, you've got to be so quick, unless it's a bit warmer. If there's any wind, it's a matter of seconds, and then your hands go, if you go out in the snow too long and your hands feel a bit dead and you can't do anything. But when you're out there by yourself and your hands go numb, I mean, you're in a bad situation because you can't get warm very quickly. Oh, wow. Yeah, so there's a risk of taking off gloves, and so I'd quite often have to kind of pour the food out. It was like a mixture of nuts and beans and things, jelly beans. I'd have to pour them out of my gloves and try and scoop them into my mouth. But because I had these big clumsy mitts on, it was really hard to get the jelly beans and put them in my mouth. And I was so hungry all the time, like starving every single day, and I would watch and see these jelly beans like fall into the snow and then disappear or be stood on, or quite often my legs were just too sore to actually pick them up. And so I would get so annoyed at the fact these jelly beans were dropping out of my hand, and I would like stomp the ground in frustration. And then I would kind of take a step back and think, it's a jelly bean, It's not going to stop me from reaching my goal. It's not going to put me in a bad mood for the day. So it was about taking a step back, thinking more holistically, and refocusing on that goal. And and I think that's something that we all sometimes do in everyday life, is things get in our way, especially if we've had a tough day, we're tired, we're stressed. Things that shouldn't be annoying become very annoying. And it happens to people all the time. If people are commuting in cars, you see them acting in ways they would never if they were meeting someone on the street. And so sometimes it's about just taking a step back and thinking about what you're actually getting annoyed about, what's frustrating you, what's pissing you off, and just thinking, is it worth it? And it's probably not. Take a step back, think about the big picture, your family, your life, what you're aiming for, and refocus on that, and don't get annoyed by the small things.
Absolutely. So how cold is it when you're over there in Antarctica to begin with?
Unfortunately, it's warming up, but at the start at base camp, it was about minus 15 to 20 degrees centigrade.
Oh my God.
And then towards the South Pole, it gets colder because you have these piercing katabatic winds that come from the south. So you're always skiing into the wind, essentially. And with wind chill, it got up to about minus 60 degrees centigrade.
Jesus.
That's cold.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's cold. It pierces through almost every single layer of your clothing you've got. So yeah.
So you're there in the kind of tundra of Antarctica, so to speak, and you haven't seen another human in 30 plus days. What the fuck is going through your mind? like what do you think about? When is it just like focusing on the next step, or are you thinking about missing things? Are you thinking about food? Are you thinking about all of those?
It sounds like you've been there, because it's pretty much exactly as you described there. So many different emotions, so many highs and lows. Focusing on each step, absolutely imperative. You've got to do that. You've got to think that every single step is leading you towards your goal. What I found actually very helpful was accountability. So Hazel and I are also ambassadors for Marie Curie, end of life charity, and that's through sort of personal experiences of ours as well. And before I'd even got to Chile, which is the leaving the departure point for Antarctica, I was aiming to raise £25,000 for Marie Curie by doing the ski, and I'd already raised £35,000 without taking a step. So that's pressure.
Yeah.
Accountability. People have not just given you motivation psychologically; they've actually put their hand in their pocket. And so for me, that's what one of the huge drivers was, thinking about everyone that's helped me there and everyone that's put their hands into their pocket. And that also meant there were lots of emotional times as well, so lots of like frozen tears, just thinking about those people, and just keeping you moving forward as well. So that was really important. I also felt very, very small and very, very insignificant out there.
I can imagine.
When you're the only thing you can see, well, you can't see anything on the horizon. You just look behind you and you've got this sledge. And so there's a certain humility that comes out of that, realizing that you're just this small creature made out of stars in this distant galaxy. And so you think about a lot about the bigger picture as well. But then there's also the idea that you might be small in stature, but when you come back, you can affect lots of people. And so you might be small in stature, but your impact can be huge. I didn't realize that till I got back, actually. I just went speaking to people, and people would ask questions and go away and do their own thing. And the power you can have by doing something like that, where you feel so small and insignificant, it should never be underestimated.
Yeah, I can imagine. Wow.
There was lots and lots of hallucinations as well. So sometimes the Flintstones would be walking past.
Not fun ones, I can imagine.
No. Sometimes you'd be skiing along, you'd hear your voice behind you, someone shouting your name.
What?
Yeah.
That sounds fucking terrifying.
It is, yeah. And you'd always look behind you, because imagine...
Of course you would.
Yeah. Imagine someone someone tapped you on the shoulder, it'd be, you'd probably collapse. So there was a lot of the Flintstones appeared, lots of strange animals, like lions running between snow patches and things like that as well.
What was causing that? Do you know? Like, is it just like fatigue?
Yeah, it's fatigue. We've had it on a few different events, actually. It's called anthropomorphism. So it's when you see innate objects as creatures or people or things, and they can like actually move around. It's so weird. It's so bizarre.
That's
But
mad.
once you recognize
Some people
it,
pay
it's
for
okay.
that.
Exactly. Yeah. That was a very expensive way to pay for it. So yeah, there was that, and then finally, absolutely, what can I eat? I mean, I would dream of walking down supermarket aisles, like Supermarket Sweep. Remember that program? And just putting everything I could into a supermarket trolley, especially Pringles. That's all I could think about. So yeah, that was on my mind a lot.
I was about to say, like, what was the first thing you ate? But you probably went back to Chile.
It was pizza. Yeah.
All
So
right.
there's a small tent at the South Pole beside the big research station, and I made my final call about 10 miles from the end, and I said I ran out of food like a day before, so I said I'm so hungry. Can you anything? So I got there, and there's this big pizza, and I think actually it was meant to be shared with others, but I mean,
I don't think anyone's going to argue with
no,
you then.
there was no stopping me, unfortunately, at that point. So,
like, did you have to like put on obviously weight before you went, because you obviously knew you were probably going to be starving at points, or was that not the plan?
Yeah, I knew I was going to lose quite a lot of weight, especially because I'd taken a lot of equipment to make sure that I would achieve it and not run out of food or fuel.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I almost ended up doing with the food, but that was okay. So I knew I'd be dragging like 130, 40 kilograms, so kind of 6 to 8 fully laden suitcases. So I knew I'd be expending upwards of about 10,000 calories a day. So I tried to take on as much as I could, but that's only 5 or 6. So you're calorie deficient 5 or 6,000 calories a day. So yeah, I put on a lot of weight. So I think I went from about 88 up to over 100. But then at the end, I dropped to below 80. I think I was about 76 kilograms. Whoa. So I lost a lot of weight. What,
like 30 plus kilograms or something. That is crazy.
Skin and bone.
Yeah. And Hazel, what was like? You're obviously just sitting at home hoping I mean, can you communicate with him when he's over there, or?
Yes and no. So I went down to Chile as well to help with the final preparations and packing up the pulk.
So you're not just like sitting at home waiting for a phone call 45 days later.
Not quite. and then I was kind of back, I guess, managing all the PR stuff and any of that. I'm trying to update all the social media. So look at a bit of a unexpected thing happened 2 weeks in that the solar panels, because it's 24-hour daylight there, so it's our winter but their summer. So he would use the solar panels to charge his batteries and then charge all his devices, and including satellite phone and GPS and all that kind of stuff, tracking device.
There's so much things
that
you just don't think
about.
To
think about. But 2 weeks in, I don't know if it was moisture or something had happened, and actually the solar panels were not charging the battery pack. And luckily Luke had charged everything up the night before. But that meant that from there for the next month, he had to just use whatever battery was remaining in the devices. So things like the satellite phone, luckily there were backups, because you have to check in with the logistics team every night. Just he would have to give a position.
Right, yeah.
So once, but we couldn't really chat after that. So we kind of had a brief chat every evening, and then just whenever. And then after that, it was
like unexpected. It's not like you can. Not that it makes it any better, but there was like a sudden cut off, so you can't say I'll speak to you in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it was like and I was the kind of main emergency point of contact, so I'd always have my phone on, make sure I was always in signal. So even back here, things you don't think about, I went to go for a hill run and then realized that I was out of service, out of 3G. It was like, well, or out of any phone service. Yeah. So if Luke had called in an emergency, then I wouldn't have been able to answer it. So little things like that. Just to wait for any kind of call. So I would get an email from the logistics team with Luke's position, and then have to put on a very positive face for the kind of social media, like Luke's doing really well, he's made good progress. It's like, I haven't spoken to Luke in 2 weeks, but I'll kind of keep doing all that stuff. And then I actually got a bit of a call about a week from the end, at 3 a.m. from Luke saying, okay, just quickly, my thumb has gone black. Just want to talk through what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to do this. Can you just double check? So I had to say, okay, call me back in 5 minutes. get Google up and just, okay, what to do with frostbite, and was kind of imagining like coming home with
Oh my God.
fingers removed and all that kind of stuff as well. But it all...
Most guys call their girlfriends at 3 a.m. in the morning for something else.
Yeah, I
and,
left home.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that's not the call Hazel would have wanted. I think.
No.
Yeah, I mean, I would way rather go through the stuff I did down there than go through watching someone else do it. It is, it's so tough, and having to yeah,
especially
absolute
hearing
rock.
things like that. Yeah, my fingers, my thumbs are black. Like, yeah, that's just scary.
all I could think of.
That's
Everything, like, you know, when something happens and you just see that everywhere. Like, I was the next day or something, I was like chopping carrots and imagining Luke getting his fingers amputated, like just silly things like that. It just like weaves its way into your subconscious. And
did you kind of come away relatively unscathed? I can't remember.
Yeah,
Like,
relatively unscathed. I had a bit of frostbite on my nose. So I had a black nose for a while. But it meant because I had an interview with BBC Breakfast about a week after I got back.
Okay.
So a few people had watched it. And so I can't remember, we were somewhere in East Lothian and a hotel manager spotted it. And so we got a free night in a hotel from it. So yeah.
It's like, great, you can keep that black bit on the end of your nose.
Yeah, exactly. So eventually...
make up for the rest of the it actually does go away.
Yeah.
I think it got left by the side of the sink when it did fall off.
Yeah.
As a present.
I was putting a t-shirt over or taking a t-shirt off, and eventually it just kind of like came off, and it was just this black crust of nose.
Wow.
Basically came off. Yeah, and a little bit of frostbite in my fingers as well, and then some infections in my legs as well that were from something called polar thigh, which is essentially exposure to wind and cold temperatures for a long duration. Means that the skin kind of breaks down and becomes pretty disgusting. And they weren't infected at the time, but on the flight going back and the travel going back, they got quite badly infected. Yeah, so they were big, gaping, horrible wounds. The nurses at the NHS, again, not for the first time in my life, were very supportive and helpful. So yeah, a lot to be grateful for.
But it was that, you know, look, you've kind of done that and come back. And then there was about 3 months of recovery after that people don't really see. So every day he had to have his nose and, well, his thumbs dressed and clean dressings to stop them getting infected, and put aloe vera on it. So that helps. Frostbite kind of helps it heal. And also the leg dressings from the polar thigh. So every day had to be cleaned, new dressings on for, I think it was about 2 and a bit months. So it's stuff like that that you don't kind of realize the after effects.
The last thing you probably want to do is move around and do interviews.
Yeah, pretty much. But at the same time, kind of what I was talking about a bit earlier, physically, yeah, absolutely. You just want to lie in bed in a dark room for a while. But when you go back and you have messages from people saying, you know, my son's had a brain tumor, things like that. And so you want to get out there and tell your story and help others as much as you can and inspire them. So there's a real tug to trying to do too much when I got back, and also just realizing I didn't have any energy. So, so
I remember I don't know if I'm sure you're probably aware of him, but like Ross Edgley, who swam around Britain recently. I'm a big fan of his. And he was just like, you know, the next morning he was so used to kind of his sleeping pattern and things like that. I have to get up to swim in the middle of the night. Like he was like sleepwalking, trying to find his like swimming trunks and all this kind of stuff apparently. And like his missus had to like bring him back to bed and all this kind of thing. And he like had to learn how to walk again because like he'd never been on like non-moving land. He was on a boat or in the water. So like all the muscles in his feet had collapsed and things like that. But you don't really, like, you cross the finish line and like you say, there's still months of work to kind of do afterwards.
It's that image of the iceberg, isn't it? It's what, you know, people see and everything underneath it. And most of the stuff underneath is the good stories and the nitty gritty bits. But it's what, I don't know. The bit at the top makes it all worthwhile sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Hazel, you I read on a blog or an article somewhere that you said you could barely run 5 kilometers, and now you're running a lot more than 5 kilometers, like ultra marathons through Sweden and Arctic circles and God knows whatever. Like, how did you manage to make the leap? Obviously, it wasn't instantaneous, I suppose. But how did you make the leap between not being able to run 5K, then now you're doing ultra marathons in horrible conditions.
Horrible conditions. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It wasn't a leap. So I mean, I'd always been kind of fit-ish. So I did swimming and things at school and would do skiing, but never really been into running or anything. And I remember running like once around Arthur's Seat at university and was like, it's pretty tough. It's enough just like pounding the pavement, like, oh, this running thing's not really for me. But then it was kind of after university that I was like, okay, people seem to do this like running thing. I'll sign up for a half marathon. So there was someone else I signed up for this half marathon with. But I was too scared. So I actually didn't even turn up and didn't even show up on the day and even go to the start line to do it. And was just like, 13 miles just seemed like this a huge distance, 21 kilometers. And it was just, I just didn't even show up. So then it was a few years after that there was someone else doing a half marathon. So I thought, okay, I'm going to actually try and do it this time and not be such a wuss. Yeah. Actually, kind of put in the miles and kind of do it. I just absolutely loved it. And I remember just running round. It was in Inverness actually, so you get piped down to the start, and it's just fantastic, and just buzzing after it. And I remember looking back and thinking like, wow, I've just run 21 kilometers, like 13 miles, like 5 kilometers just doesn't seem like very much at all right now. And I guess it just kind of went from there, that whole thing of thinking something is really scary and really big and being like, oh, there's no way I could do that. And then actually breaking it down, working towards it, and then doing it and thinking, okay, I've run a half marathon. It's like, right now, what can I do? And it's like, then it went on to, okay, I'll try this marathon. And it really, it's trail running that's then taken it to the next level for me. So actually I remember the first kind of trail running race I did, Luke actually did it as well. And it is the first and only race I've ever won.
Oh, wow.
But yeah, no, it was in the Pentlands. So 20 miles, only because it was a sponsored walk, but they were allowed, you were allowed to enter it to run if you wanted to. So I entered one of the courses. There was 3 different courses, and it was quite satisfying running past everyone that was walking. So yeah, first and only time that I've ever actually won a race. But the amazing thing about that was, I had a little backpack on. In it, I had a kind of water, food, spare layers. Everything I kind of needed was in this backpack so that I could run in the hills, on the trails for the next like 6 hours. And it was just this feeling of just excitement and adventure and freedom that, having everything on me and I could just run. And it was almost like the limit was my legs and my mind, and that was it. And it was just like, where could I go? And so I guess that really brought into the next level. I'm thinking, okay, I've done 20 miles. Okay, I've done a marathon. And then it's just been this gradual thing of, okay, now I can do that. So kind of what can I do next? So not so much a leap. It's definitely been over many years. You got inspired by
Luke's Antarctic experience and decided to do an Arctic experience
for that
instead.
One. So the Arctic one actually came. It was originally going to be a jungle marathon, and I was going to run it, the ultramarathon, with my friend. And then for whatever reason, we had to postpone it. But within the same company, there was the Arctic version. It was like, oh, this will be fantastic. So it was just about 2 weeks. I think it was 2 weeks after Luke got back from Antarctica. So poor Luke with all his injuries, and I abandoned him.
My
and
nurse disappeared.
Yeah, like, see ya, I'm off to go and run in snowshoes in the Arctic for a bit. But no, it was actually really nice being up there in those conditions and actually just thinking and imagining what he was doing like just a few weeks earlier, and all that kind of skiing and being in the freezing wind. The benefit of the Arctic ice ultra that I did was there was boiling water from the checkpoints, so I didn't have to get out a stove and do all that. Although I did carry all my own kind of equipment, and then every night got into a nice cabin or tent, so it wasn't quite as bad.
No. So how long was it again, though? Sorry,
about 140 miles. So yeah, but it was kind of tricky. The conditions had gone a little bit warmer. It was in February, and so we were running across these massive frozen lakes. I think the biggest one was about 15 kilometers long, so you're just running and it's kind of flat. But the top level of snow on the top of the lake had started to thaw, so there was almost this like layer of slush just sitting there. So as you're running through, your feet sometimes would break through, and you pull out your snowshoe, and the snow would the slush would freeze. It was almost like cement freezing around each of your snowshoes. So we'd get to the side of the lakes and have to like, there was like a support team would chip with like an ice axe or something, chip the ice off your snowshoes, so then you could run on the snowy trails instead. So yeah, it was tough, but it was pretty amazing.
So I picked Hazel up from the airport after that, and your legs or your shins were so bad, were so sore, you basically couldn't walk.
Yeah.
And I couldn't walk either because I had these holes in my legs. So we must have looked like awful.
Somebody please get this couple some help.
Black nose and like bandage, and Hazel was like couldn't walk properly. It's like, what have you guys been up to?
Oh my God. Like, what kind of speeds are you able to run in snow?
Oh, very slow. I can't even think.
It's more like a jog speed or
like a
walk.
Shuffle. Yeah, I guess up some of the hills it's like a power walk, and
God, man,
you're in snowshoes.
exhausting.
Yeah, it's pretty knackering. When you're off the lakes it was a bit easier, but on the lakes because of the slush, that was pretty tough.
I hate running the best of times. Never mind having to run like in the horrible temperatures and snow as well.
But it was one of those, I don't know, it was one of those things like, again, like having everything on your back. It's like you've got all your layers on, and even though the wind is whipping around your face and the snow's going like sideways in your head torch, you're warm and everything's okay, and you're moving forward. And it's kind of that like, I don't know, deep sense of almost like satisfaction and like calm. It's like, okay, I'm okay in these conditions and I can survive. I don't know. It's there's something quite nice about it, being out in the raw elements and feeling like warm and cozy.
Yeah, you've got another event coming up, don't you?
Yes. So what day is it now? Wednesday. So a week on Friday. So next Friday.
Oh wow.
I'll be doing what's called the CCC. So it's part of this massive, probably one of the most famous trail running, I guess, almost like festivals in the world. So it's based out of Chamonix in France. There's kind of different levels of races. The big one is a full lap around Mont Blanc. So I'm doing the kind of next tier down. It's called the Little Sister, but it's still a bit of a beast. It's
How patronizing.
I know. It's big sister. So it's about 100 kilometers and 6,000 meters of up and down. So it's almost 5 Ben Nevises up and down. So it starts in Courmayeur, which is in Italy, just through the Mont Blanc tunnel, and then to Champé in Switzerland, and then you finish in Chamonix. And so it's just the busiest weekend or week really of the year in Chamonix, and lots of people descending and running, and lots of cowbells and allez, and all that kind of stuff. So so there's about 26, I think just over 26 hours you have to do it.
So there's a time limit on it.
There's a time limit, so I'll definitely be running for probably about 24 hours. So
oh my God, how the hell do you prepare for something like that? I don't think I've done anything for 24 hours other than breathe.
I guess just
keep breathing.
Keep breathing. Keep breathing.
One foot in front of the other.
Keep breathing, keep eating. And I guess it's like anything that's huge and almost too big to comprehend in life. You just break it down into bits. So thinking about the whole distance or running for 24 plus hours is, it's almost like, just too much. So it's, breaking it down into checkpoints and thinking, right, it's a few hours till I get here, and then I'll like refuel, and every 20-25 minutes taking a bite of something. So keeping the energy up. So it's broken down into kind of smaller chunks. Physically, I guess it's kind of doing longer distances, so building up a bit of an endurance baseline, and then lots of climbing, lots of hills, and been on the Stairmaster at the Commonwealth Pool, just like plodding up, watching the morning news, like going up the steps on that and things like that. Because even running in the Pentlands, you get a decent climb up, but it's not the same as some of these climbs in the Alps. You're climbing up for hours, so it's trying to kind of do that.
Now, when you're running, then when I'm not running for 24 hours, albeit it's a bit different. It's like 5K near my house, so it's on a completely different scale. But I kind of even annoyingly get concerned with like when I'm not running. The last time I was running quicker because the lady in my Nike headphones tells me that I'm slowing down. But are you concerned about your pace, or are you just kind of like, I just want to finish it? I'm not really concerned about what time I do.
So for me, it's more doing it. So I just quite enjoy the adventure. Maybe if I was better, I would be going to like, I don't know, maybe if I had done it for a few years and was like, right, I've put in extra training this year, I'm going to nail my time last year or something like that. But I don't know, for me, it's more just, I just love running and love running outside. And Chamonix is quite a special place. We've spent a lot of time there and just love running in the mountains. And to be able to do that with all these other people around and people just like cheering on is just the excitement. I guess I want to be able to do it and not be timed out. That would be pretty, I'd be pretty gutted about that. So it's more of a keep a loose eye on the time. So I'll know and I'll have on me like what the cutoffs are. So I'm kind of aiming and making sure I'm ahead of that. But other than that, I don't know, especially over that distance, so many things can happen. And it's trying to not start off too quick. And I mean, you just have to watch it. The descents are so technical. And if you're tired, you just have to watch you don't trip over a tree root. You know, there's so many things that can go wrong. So it's just really kind of steady, keep eating, keep my wits about me. But I just really want to finish it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that'll be awesome.
So that's it.
Wow. And do you, either of you, like for all the events you do, follow a specific like diet plan or, you know, anything like that? Or, you know, like I'm massive on intermittent fasting at the moment. Like, do you guys do anything like that at all in terms of your training plans and your nutrition? Or is it just energy?
Just energy, yeah. We're both mostly veggie, so we eat a lot of I guess most of our diet's probably fruit, veg, and like nuts, lentil, like all that kind of stuff, complex carbs. Don't eat too much junk food, but on race day sometimes you just want it, and it's, I don't know, if it's in the house. Yeah, exactly. If it's in the house, like I'll eat it for sure.
Yeah, the longer, so we try and we've kind of ended up splitting our time a bit between organised races such as the CCC and the MDS in the Sahara and things like that, and doing our own expeditions that we plan from scratch, which are really satisfying. I think the shorter races, we focus quite a lot on what we eat during the race, so we'll have that pretty much nailed. And in terms of eating before it, maybe like the day before or 2 days before, we'll have lots of pasta or something like that. And then the bigger trips, like the Alaska one we did 2 years ago, which was like 90 days or essentially, I remember thinking, right, this is something I need to put on some weight for again, which is one of the most enjoyable things about those kind of trips. You can just imagine. Like eat it all and then make sure you actually go on the trip, otherwise just
gained
exactly
15 plus kilograms for nothing.
So it's it kind of depends on the event, I think, as well. So
I don't know, I guess certainly for me anyway, you know, I like eating nice food and kind of healthy food, but I see it as fuel. So it's I don't know, sometimes it's just want something. Like I'm normally always hungry if I'm doing lots of training, so I guess it's lots of snacking and just food as fuel, just like constantly kind of grazing and eating. But
I drive my fiance wild because if it wasn't for her, I'd eat the same breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day.
What do you eat?
Well, like, so now with intermittent fasting, so like I eat everything between 1 and 9, because it would be very cruel of me to let her eat dinner by herself every evening. But so I start eating at 1 and then I stop eating at 9, and then between 9 and 1 the next day, I only have water or black coffee, like nothing else. And sometimes like at the weekends when you're maybe like sleeping in a little bit later or whatever it may be, or you're not having get up to go to work, then it'll be even longer. Like I've done, like I think the app tells me that I'm using, like my longest one was something like 28 hours or something like that. I didn't even feel hungry. I only ate because it's like I should probably eat something. And I'm training, like, you know, I've got a gym at home and stuff, so like I train fasted and things like that as well. But if it was left to my own device, it would be basically chicken, sweet potato till the cows come home, tuna,
love sweet potato,
tuna and a pita bread for lunch with some avocado and some nuts, some coffee and a protein shake, and then dinner would be like chicken with a Nando's sauce and sweet potato and sweet corn, probably every single evening. It's pretty much when I lived in my own flat is literally all I bought and ate, and my mates would give me pelters for it. But now I have a bit more of a variety in my diet. But like I think I just see it as like I just need to eat something I've kind of lost the relationship with food. I love food, but kind of lost the relationship. It's just fuel.
Yeah.
As you say.
I think a lot of people take enjoyment out of cooking a meal on a Sunday and that kind of thing, and I can totally see that if it's relaxing. But yeah, we tend to it's what's the most efficient way to eat food.
Yeah, exactly. You mentioned just very briefly there, like you did MDS in the Sahara, which is Marathon des Sables. I don't know how to pronounce it, but
the sand marathon.
Sounds like fucking hell on earth, if you're honest. But I actually came I don't know if you guys have seen Losers on Netflix. It's like a series. It's quite a strange series because there's not much footage to it. It's mainly just kind of like animated storyboards almost, but it's basically a series about people who didn't achieve their goal, or they lost a big race, or like key moments where people just like crumbled under the pressure or something like that. And there's boxers and famous golfers on it. But one of the episodes, this is actually what I knew even this race was, is that this guy and his friend did this race. And then basically, I can't remember how long ago it was, but there was like a big sandstorm and they got split up. And this guy basically got lost in the Sahara Desert for
it was an Italian guy.
Yeah.
There's like the legend you hear when you're running, like the legend of it, and you have to eat like bats.
Yeah, you ate like bats in this like abandoned thing, and then all this kind of stuff. And then I was just doing a bit of research before you guys came on the show, and I was like, fucking hell, they've done that. Like, that's mental. What was that like?
Hot.
Yeah.
So it's about
one thing you can't prepare for when you're here, that's for sure.
Yeah. It's quite overwhelming, the heat at times. So the Marathon des Sables is essentially 7 marathons in 7 days, in the Sahara Desert of all places, which feels when you're there very inhospitable because there's not trees. Like when we got back to civilization afterwards, we just hadn't realized how much we missed greenery. It was almost like this, like, as soon as we came back into one of the towns, it's like, oh, this is what's been missing. Yeah. So yeah, very hot, kind of like about 50 degrees. It would get midday one of the days. Someone had a temperature on there. So you start running in the morning, and then about 11 o'clock, even before that, everything slows down, and it's almost like, I don't know, you're just so slow. And they give out salt tablets. You have to take salt tablets to replace what you're sweating out. And I think you get something like 10 liters of water a day.
Wow.
That you absolutely
guzzle, obviously.
Yeah, with your salt tablets as well. And you just have to move slowly and kind of keep moving. But yeah,
Hazel definitely kept me moving on that race. I'm not blessed with a Mediterranean sort of tan or a complexion, so yeah, the heat I struggled. I mean, I'm much better. I find cold conditions much more suitable.
I'm
to
the
me.
same. I've always said I would rather be too cold than too hot.
Yeah. I struggled. I mean, I'm not sure I would have been able to finish it without Hazel, to be honest. It was so hot every single day.
And it's a marathon, did you say? Sorry.
7 marathons in 7 days.
Yeah. It works out as that. One of the days was 80k.
80 something k, yeah.
So that's a couple of marathons.
It's called the long stage.
Yeah. And that's through the night. You're doing stuff, but
I
mean, it was an amazing race to do. And again, like the more organized events that we do, or the bigger races and things, it's about the people you meet there, and that's one of the races that a lot of people have on their kind of to-do list. And so the people you meet there are usually just like so inspiring, and
all kinds of different stories.
Yes, background stories, and some you don't realize until you speak to them, or they tell you their story. And that was a small handful of people we were able to meet there. So so I definitely enjoyed it more from that perspective than actually saying, I'd love to run in the Sahara in 50 degrees again. I've got to be honest, I wouldn't. Yeah. But I would love to meet more of the people that are doing the race.
Never looked forward to coming home to Scotland ever.
I know. It's a different type of challenge, I guess, than some of the colder ones. Just that heat. It's like still a mental challenge. And with that long stage, the 81 or whatever it was, 80 something kilometers, you're running for almost 24 hours and through the night with a head torch through it's the Marathon of the Sand, so just through endless kind of sand, and you can't move that quickly.
Worse to run on.
Yeah, exactly. It's just by that point through the night you're kind of moving, but again, like so many hallucinations and things. I
was just about to ask, but the dehydration and stuff, you must have had tons there if you had it elsewhere.
Yeah, it was fatigue, I think, kind of more than anything. And just, I don't know. I think some of the hallucinations are maybe when you're deprived, like sensory deprived a little bit. So it was just as the sun was kind of starting to come up in the morning and you're beginning to make sense of shapes and things around you.
Yeah.
And, I certainly thought that there was like these rows and crowds of like all this cheering happening, and I was like, oh, there's all these people like come out to support us, and I was like, oh wait, there's like animals cheering us as well, and I was like, hang on, they're bushes. They're not animals. Okay, it's like, okay, like, yeah, you're still there, let's keep moving. So
Wow,
yeah,
that
your
must
mind
be
just
pretty
plays
trippy
tricks.
because you'll probably be like, well, I don't know. Are you tempted to kind of stop and absorb the hallucination,
Yeah.
or are you just kind of like, keep your blinders on, don't look at the hallucinations, just keep running?
Kind of look at it, trying to work it out. And sometimes, as Luke had said, in Antarctica, like it shifts and changes, and you can get it even just a little bit of tiredness. And in like a forest or something, I'll see animals in like a tree stump or something.
Wow.
And or rocks like can look like sea creatures and things like. Yeah, it's quite fun once you know that your mind is going to do it. It's a bit more relaxing. The first time it's like, whoa, what's going on? Am I okay? But then after that, it's like, okay, I'm just a bit tired and I'm a bit maybe sensory deprived. So just write it
Must
out.
be pretty wild though.
Yeah, and
Kind of in a weird way. I want to know what it feels like, but I don't really want to have to go to the Sahara to do so.
Just
Yeah.
go on a big long hike
Yeah.
for 24 hours or something. Get a bit tired.
Because you always see, like, when you see these, like, Channel 4 program with the SAS thing and all that kind of stuff, and they talk about, like, one of the last stages is that exhaustion thing, and they're starting to hallucinate, and you're just like, how could they possibly be hallucinating? But it must, like it's amazing what tiredness or dehydration can do to the human body.
Yeah, it is quite amazing. And it's visual and like Luke said, in Antarctica, like a lot of like oral stuff as well. So you're hearing whispering or music. I remember the first time I had it, oral hallucinations, was after finishing my like final thesis for uni, and like I'd been up in the computer labs at that point like 2 days straight, like not really sleeping, like trying to just get it all done. And I was cycling back and I was like, oh wow, it was like 8 a.m. and I was like, oh, there's like a symphony playing, it's so nice, like just through George Square, like, oh, this is lovely. And I was like, hang on. And it was just like the wind like flapping some like building plastic stuff that was on scaffolding or something, but I thought it was this orchestra playing some sounds. So that was my first
Wow.
hallucination. So yeah.
Oh wow. What's worse, doing an ultra marathon in the cold, or your answer, Luke, or the warm?
I've not done one in the Arctic actually,
Yeah.
but I mean, I would have to say the Arctic without having done one.
Worse.
Oh no, sorry. Yeah,
Yeah.
much prefer to do it in colder.
Yeah.
Colder environments.
Same. Yeah.
I'd always like, again, I've never done it in the Arctic or freezing cold conditions either, but I'd always like to think that whenever you're too cold, you can always warm yourself up by moving and stay moving. Fair enough, it might get more difficult as your muscles fatigue and stuff, but if you're too hot, you can never cool yourself down really, or can you?
Yeah, even on the MDS, so there was such little shade anywhere, and even when you got back and you got into these black tents that are set up in this kind of semicircle, a horseshoe type shape with all the dozens of tents, you're in the tent, but it's still so warm. And as you said, when you're in Antarctica or in the Arctic and you get into that tent and you can wear all your clothes and then jump up and down and then get into the sleeping bag, you do get warm. And if you get too warm, you take off clothes. Whereas when you're naked in a tent, there's nothing else to take off. And I will kick off duvets because I'm too warm in Edinburgh, let alone somewhere like
all
that.
the time.
So,
there's at the moment, like, the top floor of our house is boiling, and pretty much every night there's a fan on my side of the bed, and then the other half's in a dressing gown and whatnot, like on her, because she's always cold and I'm always boiling.
Yeah. So yeah, again, great race to have done, but not one I would like to do again.
And then a week later, you did London Marathon, dressed as camels or something?
Yes. So we knew we got a place on it to raise money for Marie Curie, and we knew that we wanted to do it in fancy dress, and we're kind of thinking like, oh, what should we do? And then we came back from the Marathon Des Sables, and we're like, we should do it as camels, because in the race there's almost like in a lot of these races, they have the broom wagon or something that kind of comes at the end to like sweep everyone up and make sure like everyone keeps moving. So in the Marathon Des Sables, there's a camel that's like led, so that if you're slower than the camel, like you're out, basically. I mean, the camel's pretty slow, so you have to be really slow to be slower than the camel. But we thought, okay, all right, we'll bring a little bit of the Sahara to London. But we didn't really think through our costumes. We ordered these kind of like stuffed animal camels. So not, you could get these inflatable ones or things that are super light.
Yeah.
But it was actually quite heavy. And so it had the camel neck and then the legs. So every time we moved our legs to run, we were kicking up the camel legs at the front. You can't see if you're listening that I'm doing the motion with my hands here. And actually it was our like hip flexors and things that from just pushing up every time we ran this like heavy camel leg. But as we ran around, all you heard was like, come on camels, come on camels.
Probably one of these things as well, because I always find even on short runs, mind over matter is like distracting yourself from thinking. It's like, you know, like I hate running on a treadmill because you've got a clock just ticking in front of you about, and it could just be like a warm-up run and you're like, this is the longest warm-up run ever. Well, if you don't have it, it goes like, you know, by like that. So the fact that even just having an extra little bit of weight to run with a marathon nonetheless, but must be just a bit unbearable at times.
Again,
it was really hard
because we were raising money for Marie Curie and people had donated and you know, we wanted to do it, and so that definitely spurred us on, but it wasn't, I wouldn't say comfortable to do.
And it took us quite a while, longer than we kind of thought. So we were running for longer as well, but we got it. We hobbled over the line.
Yeah.
I think our folks were watching on TV or something.
That's my camel.
Yeah.
Like I am a huge fitness fanatic, and I always say, you know, I've done CrossFit before and all these kind of horrible workouts and things like that. And then I've also done, you know, tiny events in comparison to the kind of stuff that you do, like Tough Mudders and things like that. But I think you kind of learn quite a lot about yourself by suffering during a workout or during a run or whatever it may be. You know, you always kind of reach your limit at times, and sometimes, you know, it could just be the fact that you're having a shit day, and like the workout that you did last week, you're doing the same workout, but all of a sudden it's really, really hard. But being able to kind of identify that, I'm reaching my limit, but then you push yourself through it. The amazing feeling you get once you stop afterwards is such a great sense of accomplishment. Do you guys feel the same way? Is that the kind of same things you experience, or what are like some of the most suffering things you've been through?
Well, I think we did another ultra race called the Cape Wrath Ultra Expedition race. So that was 250 miles from Fort William. Yeah, Wrath. From Fort William all the way up the west coast, beautiful west coast of Scotland, remote mountains, all the way up to Sandwood Bay, and Cape Wrath. Yeah. And eventually
we had to run another 7 miles from Sandwood Bay, which took hours.
Remembering those 7 miles,
we ran beyond Sandwood Bay.
And this was a few months after Antarctica, and you know, we don't have enough time to train for these events, but we just do them anyway, and that's why the mind over the matter it's really, really important for us, because we've always underprepared because we don't have enough time. Before Cape Wrath, we ran the whole race together, and most evenings we were one of the last groups in, and so we would be out sometimes for one day we were out for 15 hours running, and then the race starts again the next morning at 7 p.m. And I remember speaking to the guy that won it, or the people that were really kind of finishing it very, very short days each day. And I was saying, you know, it's amazing. You guys are just so quick, so good. You know, you're doing it in 4 hours and we're taking, you know, double the time. And he was like, no, you guys are way more impressive. You guys are out there for way longer, getting less rest each night, putting your bodies through more, your minds through more. And I was like, nah, no way. And then as we started doing a few more events, we were like not usually right at the back. We're kind of mid or MDS. There are people that are out there for a lot longer than us. And I now see what he's talking about, because we'd finished and I was thinking, I mean, there's no way I could be out there any longer than those guys. So there's that difference between the people that, you know, are the elite athletes, the elite runners, that's their sport. Yeah. And then the people that, you know, do obviously train for it, but either don't have the time or the ability. And so for them, that mental approach is really everything. And so staying injury free and having that mental approach to things is in many ways as important as being an elite athlete. And the expeditions we go on, that's way more important. You don't need to be quick to ski across Antarctica. You need to be strong to a certain extent, but you don't really. It's way more about the mental approach.
Yeah, I was about to say.
And staying injury free and being sensible and seeing out each day, not going too quick. And same with Alaska, the big kayak and bike trip we did in the Arctic up there, and things like that. All the skiing, it's quite a different approach.
And just building on your point around, that satisfaction when you're not sure you can do something and then you do, whether it's a workout or any kind of race. I've done Tough Mudder, they're amazing, but it's hard running in between all the different obstacles and things.
I think the worst thing for a Tough Mudder with me is that I did it the first year it came to Scotland and it was pretty dead. And then the second year, it was mega popular. And that was actually worse because I kept cramping up because you're like in queues all the time after running. Okay. And you're like, the first time I just, like, there was not a single queue because nobody wanted to do it. But like the second time, it was just like the queues are actually, yes, it's rest. But once you start running again, my calves were cramping up. And stuff.
But I think that whole thing, I guess it's like with anything in life, really. It's like once you're at the edge or just beyond your comfort zone, that's when you're really kind of like learning and growing and like some kind of change happens. And it's like very much live by the kind of mentality that if you're uncomfortable, you're probably growing and you're learning. And it's like, I'm not sure if this bit scared to do this. It's like, well, then that's when you should do it. Say yes and like go for it. And it's the same within a workout. It's like, I'm not sure I can do another one. Okay, let's just try and kind of see if that happens. And then that's how it's just those incremental things, like, every day, just do one little thing that kind of scares you or pushes you. And then it's cumulative and it kind of adds up over time. And it's the same with training or your confidence in being able to kind of say yes to things and put yourself out there. So it's just this kind of small nudges here and there that actually add up.
And even going back, sorry, just to labour the point, it's a really good point. So we were up at the Glenmore Lodge Outdoor Centre with the Polar Academy at their selection weekend, and so we had 10 children that will, some of which will be going up to Greenland next year, and it's putting them through a weekend of kind of physical work and deciding who gets to go to Greenland. And some of the children there had never climbed a wall before, which is completely understandable. And so they're looking at this wall thinking, what am I supposed to do here? And that's a really long way up. There's no way I can get up that wall. And some of them, for the first time, it's, okay, this is how it works. And then usually second or third time they're up that wall, and then they come back down and you see their faces and you see the satisfaction and the confidence just growing that they could now do something that even just a few minutes ago they had no idea they could do. Another event we do is we get them in kayaks and they get flipped underwater and have to tie knots. And some of them have never tied a knot other than their shoelace before, have never been flipped underwater before. Another one's holding your breath underwater. So Craig Matheson, the founder of the Polar Academy, he does this exercise where basically you stay underwater for as long as you can. And taking myself as an example, first
star
time
pupil here.
What's that, sorry?
Star pupil.
Star pupil,
gold star. I was going to say, can adults do this? This sounds amazing. Like,
yeah, they actually can, but so yeah, it's one of the things I've actually impressed myself with, and there's not many, but this is one. The first time he said, okay, hold your breath, and I lasted about 30 seconds, and that was about it. And he gave me some guidance, and eventually 3 goals later, I was up to 3.5 minutes underwater.
That is mental.
And I came up and I wasn't out of breath. And it's just because I followed instructions, and it's just mind over matter.
Yeah, staying relaxed.
And yeah, these kids, they were abseiling off 10-meter cliffs. Most of them scared of heights and never done anything like that before. And so sometimes just giving someone that confidence or giving them that nudge to go on and do something like that is all they need, and then they're off.
Yeah.
And it's the same in adult life as well. Just telling someone they can do it. Why don't you do it? I'm here to help if anything goes wrong or you need me, but you can do it. So crack on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. It sounds like an awesome. How did you get involved with the Polar Academy?
So Craig had actually skied to the South Pole as well, as part of a group.
The odds of that.
Well, I met
me
him.
too.
So I was on a training trip over in East Greenland, a ski expedition, and was in this tiny airport in Reykjavik, not the international one, the domestic, well, semi-domestic one, and heard these Scottish kids' voices and was like, there's something a bit strange here. I'm kind of going to this remote place.
Hallucinating again.
Yeah, exactly. And then got on the plane, the small plane, and turned out everyone on the plane was Scottish, pretty much, because he was on the plane with these kids. So got chatting to him, spoke to him about Antarctica just before I left as well. Came back. He'd had quite a similar experience where he'd worked, and then his passion had kind of taken over his work or all his time, and he wanted to make that move into trying to figure out if his passion could become his life. And so we chatted a lot about that, and then we've just gradually got more involved. So we've been ambassadors for a few years, and then this year we were up in Greenland in the summer there with some young adults who'd been on the spring expedition a couple of years ago. Our Craig's been amazing to us. The charity's been amazing to us, and now we're just completely honoured to be guides for them, and helping these kids realize their confidence that they don't have the confidence, they have the ability. It's just about making them realize that they've got it all.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So you've now both quit your jobs to obviously kind of take on more, I suppose, expeditions, other opportunities and events and speaking of opportunities and all kinds of things. Like, what are some of your plans that you've got ahead?
Yeah, so it's been quite an interesting and exciting and kind of scary couple months now, really. So we both had really enjoyable jobs, and kind of full time. We're working on acting on climate change, like in Scotland and Europe. But we ended up, we were spending all of our evenings, some of our mornings and lunchtimes and weekends and every bit of holiday we could scrape together, going on expeditions and telling stories and sharing stories and trying to kind of inspire others to, realize their own potential, all that kind of stuff. Sure. And I guess it got to a point. So, these were all these things that we love to do, and they were filling kind of all of our spare time around work. And it was like, what if this could be our career? What if actually we could focus on this full time, 100%, and see if we can just make it work? And I guess it was a little bit of that, like, okay, if we don't try now, then we'll never know. And, we could have continued on very happily, working full time and doing all this kind of thing around. Yeah. But actually it was like, this is totally terrifying and really scary, but also really exciting. Let's just make that leap and actually see what can happen. And it's that whole thing of like, if you're at the edge of your comfort zone, let's just we're totally
very different comfort zone.
Yeah, and every day for the last couple of months we've been, or since the end of July, so 6 weeks, we've been definitely at the very edge of our comfort zone, trying to just work out which way's up and what we're going to exactly do and how we can kind of make this happen. But it's really exciting.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah, I think we've seen firsthand the impact that amazing people have had in our lives, and the impact that hopefully through our experiences and through sharing our knowledge and things that we can have on other people's lives. And so that's, I think, for me, it's just so powerful, and not being able to do that to its fullest extent is something I think I would definitely regret. So yeah, as Hazel said, at the moment it's a little bit of time out after quitting, and then Greenland, where we were for 2 weeks, just to kind of explore options. But I think a lot of it comes down to sharing those benefits we've had, including the mental health aspects of being outdoors, physical health, and just that love and passion and enjoyment of outdoors that we've benefited from, and we hope that more people can benefit from than realize just now, I think. Lots of motivational speaking, workshop for businesses and events, hoping that people come away with something really tangible, something that they can take away and actually remember about. If anyone out there is interested in collaborating, then obviously get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. No, like, it's kind of hard not to kind of feel totally motivated after hearing some of your stories, that's for sure. Like, I'm not on Instagram, but again, did a bit of research for the show. despite all your kind of grueling expeditions, like you're always smiling. And I know from tough workouts and things like that I am definitely not smiling at the end of them. Does obviously, you know, going out and doing things by yourself and doing these events by yourself is scary enough, but is having each other like a benefit, or when fatigue sets in, are you at each other's throats? It'll be interesting to see if you had the same answer.
I know.
Somebody jumps in. No.
So I think it's good to have a bit of a balance. So doing things ourselves, you know, it builds your own confidence.
Sure.
But there's something amazing about sharing an experience with someone. And, you know, when we've planned these expeditions and kind of gone on them together, it's, you know, it's just amazing to actually be able to, you know, like we were kayaking in Alaska and you're seeing humpback whales just like breaching and kind of flipping in front of us and stuff, and just absolutely amazing to be able to actually share that with someone at the time. Is just, there's kind of nothing better.
Yeah.
And I think also we're a really good team. Like we understand each other, we understand ourselves and our strengths and weaknesses. Sometimes Luke probably understands me better than I do, so he will he'll be like, oh, is it maybe time, do you want to eat something, if I'm starting to get a little bit hangry? So he'll pick up on that maybe before I do. So yeah, he's got maybe a bit more awareness of me than my own
and
self-awareness.
and vice versa.
Well,
Yeah.
it's like a truism for most good couples, I'd say. You know each other better than you know yourself sometimes.
Just it's not always great hearing it from that person. It's like, I know you better than you know yourself. No, you don't. But yeah, I think, yeah, as Hazel was saying, it's always good to do something yourself. So it makes you realize that, yes, you still can do this and you can push yourself. And, you know, you need to build your own confidence before you can exude confidence in other people and improve them as well, I think, as well. And Antarctica was definitely one of those where you had every single doubt you can imagine all throughout the journey. But you come away from it after a few months later and it's sunk in, thinking, oh, that was, kind of did all right there. But also there's no one to share it with. So a lot of the things that were going on in my mind, obviously Hazel knows more than anyone else. But you can't talk about it and you can't say, do you remember that time when this happened? And whereas the big trip in Alaska again, or Arctic Norway, or some of these races, you can say, oh, do you remember when this happened? And you can just kind of look at each other and just kind of remember it. Whereas those feelings are kind of mine and sometimes hard to describe as well. And then, yeah, as Hazel said, I think we're very good at feeding off each other and realizing when someone's struggling or someone needs a bit of a boost. And very often it's, you seem to find this inner strength when the other person's struggling. So at times when I've felt really good and Hazel's felt really bad, and vice versa, and it's like, why do I feel really good now? And it's almost like that survival instinct of when you care for someone or love someone, that when they're down, it's like, right, I've got to do this. And it was like my friends and family when I was going through health issues as well. That's when they were at their strongest. And there was no, my mum worries if when we drive down to Edinburgh, she's like, text me when you've arrived. And then it's like, she's like,
I have been to the South Pole, Mum.
Yeah,
back.
Things like that. She'll worry about, how, silly things. Well, from my perspective. And then when you phone her up and tell her you've got a brain tumor, she's like, okay, I'll be down. How are you doing? Okay, yep. You're looking after yourself. Good. Yeah. Just like that, knows what's required at that moment for that person because you know them so well. So yeah, it's really important.
That's awesome.
And I think so. We don't really bicker either. I think it's because when you're often in these events or kind of these expeditions, it's really hard for both of you. And obviously there's times that are just amazing, but generally there's times that are pretty tough. And so you almost park. You just don't have room for that. It just doesn't even. Your patience kind of increases a huge amount.
Yeah, it's not going to do anyone any favors.
Exactly. So. It's not going to help. It's not going to help morale. So actually you're almost like trying to make lightheartedness of like anything and just trying to, kind of keep motivation up. And but definitely one of the things that I did struggle with when we were in Alaska. So when we were kayaking, we were in a double kayak. So I was at the back, Luke was the power at the front, and I was on the kind of steering and the navigation as well. So it felt like, okay, we've both got our different roles and we're like a team, and that's kind of fine. And then when we were on the bikes, I was trying to carry the same weight in my panniers. look stronger. But I was like, no, I need to carry the same amount of weight, but then I wasn't as quick. And then I was like getting tired more quickly. And, really struggled from my own kind of like self-confidence, self-esteem point of view of just thinking like, I need to be carrying half the weight and I need to be kind of doing this. And actually, I worked through something that I've worked through over the years. So now it's like, well, actually, I'm not much use if I'm knackered and we're going slower. Give Luke another bag and it's fine because he's stronger. And so now definitely I've got more of a kind of, we are holistic, the team. We don't have to like carry the same amount of weight because that's just not very efficient. And, we can move quicker and be less tired, both of us, if we split it and play to our strengths. And it's, it's that whole strengths and weaknesses. It's like, Luke is stronger than me, give him more weight. So I kind of go over myself a little bit, but it's like, no, I have to carry this. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, you kind of learn and I guess grow up a little bit.
And it's the whole, that holistic view of at that particular moment in time, it just makes sense. But would we actually be there if it wasn't for you, and not just the physical attributes, but the prep and all the logistics and things like that. So it's not just about, I can cycle 5 kilometers faster. It's not about that. It's about how did we get there, and I wouldn't be there if it wasn't for you, and wouldn't get to where we were getting to if it wasn't without you as well, if it wasn't for you. So so it's about taking a step back and thinking, okay, I'm not happy with exactly what's going on at the moment, but the reason we're here is because I've done this, or because you've done this as well. So it's bigger picture stuff.
I've got a bit of a strange question, but I'm completely stealing it from another podcast that I listened to, but I thought it was quite a good question for people that have kind of been through what you've been through. What thing has happened in your life that you don't wish to repeat but has had the most profound effect on you?
Ooh. Do you want me to go first, or do you want to?
I'll go first.
Okay.
I'd probably have to say the brain surgery, I think. It is not something that I'd wish upon anyone.
I can imagine.
You are, 1 minute you think everything's fine, and the next minute you're in hospital and you're literally being left in A&E with lots of drugs taking, wondering what's going on here. And I felt such a burden, because I was like, okay, I'm here. I'm going to be off work for 4 months, probably. Who's going to do that? And then my parents, they don't live in Edinburgh. They're northeast. So I was like, they're going to have to come down, and who's going to happen about the car? My rent, who's going to pay all that? And so you just think the irrational stuff that everyone, if you knew you were thinking, that would be like, that is not what you should be thinking about.
Yeah, it's crazy how that goes through your head though.
Yeah, and it was something to take your mind off what's actually happening. I'm not sure, but and then when you're in the brain cancer ward and you see the people around you and you make friends with them, and many of them have been in several times for operations, and you just think, am I going to get out of here, basically? What's going to happen? And doctors are very, very honest with you. This is a best case scenario. And what I had wasn't a best case scenario. It wasn't a scenario in their eyes. And they tell you the worst case scenario as well. And so having to face up to that and not sleep at night and put your family and friends and parents through that is just a nightmare. And then waking up on the other end and having this, when it was told it wasn't cancer, it was this cyst, which is still there and can grow back, but it wasn't malignant, it was benign. It felt like this sense of guilt almost, because you're in this brain cancer ward with people that have brain cancer, and I didn't, in fact. And so the doctor said, if you're feeling okay, you can probably be out in 10 days or 2 weeks, as opposed to the 9 months I was told, or potentially. And so you've got this great sense of guilt. And there was one guy actually that the day I was meant to get out, he came in, and he was an older guy, and he'd been in for 4 or 5 operations, and this was actually to be his final one, as it turned out. And he was really into sport, really into the outdoors, had 3 daughters, and was just the nicest man ever. And the nurses could tell. The nurses really took to him so well. They knew him really well, and the nurses and doctors had told me I could leave that day, or I could leave the next day. And I was going to just get out because I just wanted to get out of the hospital. But I met him and I stayed because his operation was the next day, and we just completely clicked. And I just took on every single word he said about making the most of life and, you know, cherishing what you have and appreciating what you have, and all those aspects that sometimes you just forget about. And I still forget about, obviously, but you try not to. And obviously I didn't see him again. He passed away, but I always remember the words he said and try to take as much of that as possible. And I don't think I would have that sort of mental strength in some ways that arguably I've got to do some things that I'm not trained for. And to be able to go do those things without having gone through that experience and without having those words spoken to me by that guy. So in hindsight, you know, I wouldn't want to go through it again, as your question alluded to, but I've definitely taken a lot of positives from it, I think. So.
That's awesome. And how about yourself?
So I was having a think about, you know, events and what to kind of think for, and had kind of thrown a few things around. But I think the thing that I guess has had the most profound effect is not something that necessarily I've gone through, but that Luke's gone through, like, and me as well at the time, like with the kind of brain surgery. I was a friend at the time, so we went to school together. We were in the same friendship group.
Oh wow!
We hadn't, but I was kind of just a friend while he was kind of going through all that. But I think seeing that effect and having, you know, someone that you know and care about, and then obviously the kind of discussions and everything kind of after, is that understanding a bit of mortality and of, you know, things can happen so quickly and you just have no idea, and things can completely change overnight. And definitely
the world doesn't care to explain. Like,
no,
it can
exactly.
Just take it away from you in an instance if it wanted it to.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that definitely has kind of seeped itself into my own way and my own like way I then approach and think about things in the world. You know, like mortality seems like such a horrible thing to kind of think about, but actually it kind of sharpens your mind a little bit, and it's like, okay, what is important to me? And, you know, I can't just be complacent about trundling along through something I'm maybe not that happy with for years and years and decades. It's like, okay, what's important now? What do I want to do? I'm going to go and have a bloody good chance at kind of doing it. So I think, although it can sound really morbid and horrible, like thinking about that, and sometimes it can get a bit overwhelming thinking too much about it, but I think it definitely, it just reminds you what's important and who's important to you and things like that.
It's what you take from it, though.
Yeah, it is.
So, you know, the world can be a pretty horrible place, but you have the ability to do amazing things and change it, you know, as you've both experienced. You know, like obviously the moving on, just on that, like, you know, actually making a change, you've mentioned that you're both ambassadors for Marie Curie. Like, how much money in total have you managed to raise for Marie Curie? Do you know?
About 90?
Yeah, it's about £90,000.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and we've visited the hospice in South Edinburgh several times and seen the work that they do, and we've seen it firsthand as well, and it's just an amazing. I wish we could do more, but it's just an amazing charity to have done anything for. In fact, to be honest, it's not us that have done it; it's the people that have donated the money. So if people are happy to give money for us doing things like that, then that's their generosity. To suffer. Exactly. That's all down to their generosity. So it's been a big spur for us and things we've done, thinking about those people that have donated and the work that the nurses are doing as well. So it's hopefully we've helped them a little bit, but they've certainly helped us a lot. I'm sure you have.
That's awesome. And also, I was like, my kind of, I suppose, last question was like, do you both, and you might want to keep it a secret, that's okay too, but do you have like an ultimate, like, I want to do this before I die? You know, I was going to make a joke and say, what's your Everest? But for you guys, it probably bloody will be Everest. Like, do you have something that you want to like tick off the list, so to speak?
Yeah. It's like, okay, I'll just go. Kind of got two, and they're both very different. I I guess one for me, so helping Luke prepare for and then going down to Chile and kind of sending him off on his way off to Antarctica. It's definitely it kind of looms big in my mind and kind of has a certain tug to actually be able to go there and experience it for myself and be able to actually, be on the coldest, driest, windiest or something continent on Earth, and just this kind of whole vastness, and just I love wild open spaces and the cold, and just it conjures up just such things in my imagination. So I think would love to do a big expedition. Maybe it's ski across. I mean, the amazing thing about skiing with a pulk is it's a little bit like the kind of trail running with everything in your backpack, but to the extreme level, in that you can haul so much weight behind you. You can take all your food, all your like warm clothes, and you can be in this like crazy harsh continent with winds battering you, and you can survive for months at a time. It's just amazing, and you can kind of move forward, and it's pretty amazing, self-sufficient. So something kind of like a longer expedition on Antarctica I'd love to do, but would even more love to be able to like get a boat there, so actually not have to fly down. Whether or not it's possible, I guess if you've got the money, it's probably anything's possible, but actually be able to,
if people did it years ago, we must be able to do it
exactly,
again.
Yeah. So it's almost like harking back a little bit to the kind of golden age of exploration, and to be able to step off the boat pretty much onto the edge of the ice and then ski across and back onto the boat the other side. I don't know, there's something kind of simple and pure. It's maybe not very simple or pure, but that I think would be amazing. But then the other thing that's like almost the other extreme in my mind, which I would also love to do, is almost like just set off from the front door and just explore Scotland on foot, taking as long as I wanted or as we wanted, and just meeting people along the way, like climbing some of the hills, going to the valleys, following rivers, and just
that'd be cool.
Almost like having no pressure or expectations and just going for an adventure, just to kind of explore this amazing country we live in. So both.
Would you do that kind of as a thing, or would you document it, like, or do you want it to be quite like a pure, like, this is me, my thing?
Don't know. There is something amazing about sharing it, and actually, like love being able to encourage other people to get outdoors and take that first step to their own adventures. So documenting it in some ways is a way to be able to do that. So I wouldn't be too selfish. Maybe share some of it.
I think for me, it's something that's come to my mind fairly recently, actually. So my godmother, Maggie, sadly passed away 2 years ago. She was a midwife up in a very, very small place called Guahaven, which is a hamlet in Nunavut in the Northwest Territories of Canada. So very, very, very far north. And it's kind of right up our street. So I'd love to go
Cold.
back. Yeah, I'd love to go there on skis and ski around, and ideally meet some of the people that have been there since the 1970s and see if they remember her, and listen to their stories generally, as well as about Maggie, and just learn from them as well, just as we've done from our other Arctic adventures in Norway and Alaska as well, and just take it all in and just witness a completely different culture and what they can teach and show us as well. That would be an awesome trip.
That would be cool. Where is the best place for people to keep updated about what you guys are up to now that you're full-time explorers?
I guess the main kind of landing page would be our website. So it's everyday-exploring.com. And from that, there's click-through links to kind of Instagram, Twitter. We also have a Facebook page as well, Everyday Exploring. So I think that's probably
awesome.
Probably it.
Cool. Definitely go and like it, because there'll be some exciting things in there for sure. But no, thank you very much for both coming on the show. I've kind of hogged a bit more of your time than I said I would, but I had tons of questions.
But we've talked too much.
Yeah,
like I like stories that I was really excited to get you both on. Like when I was thinking about doing the podcast, I was kind of, who do I know that I could get on? And you guys were some of the first on the list. And I just think it would be I always love hearing stories where people are pushing themselves, both whether it's a mental barrier or a physical barrier, both in your case, and kind of going from strength to strength as well as obviously all the amazing things you're doing with Polar Academy and Marie Curie are awesome to hear. So thank you very much for coming on.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, cheers, thanks.
And to wrap up, as per usual, folks, please head up over to the website, themitmpodcast.com. That's themitmpodcast.com. You can find out more about the show, and you can also discover how you can actually support the show as well, which is cool. And obviously, make sure you head over to your favorite podcast platform and hit the subscribe or follow button, and that will make sure that you get notified when a new episode goes up, which would be awesome. I'm trying to get through different podcast platforms in my time, but it's up on all the major ones: Apple, Spotify, TuneIn, YouTube, and SoundCloud. Plus, while you're there, please leave a review. Obviously, it lets me know what you guys think, but it also helps kind of bring other people into the show and just kind of help promote the show as well. So that's it from us here, and thank you very much for listening, and I hope you found some method in the madness.